Thank you to all members of the public, councillors and officers who are joining us for today's meeting. Councillors and officers are reminded of their commitment to the Civility and Respect Pledge and to be mindful of this during tonight's meeting. Please be aware that the Council is video recording this meeting and this will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. I would just like to highlight some key points of the meeting format. Please can I ask everyone to have their phones turned off or set to silent. The fire exits are via the doors out of the chambers and down the external fire escape stairs, or via the main entrance that you entered the building through. In the event of a fire, the lift should not be used. The assembly point is to outside the Royal Mail Parcel Office on West Street. Please remain seated unless you're invited to speak or need to take a comfort break. The toilet facilities are out in the corridor you entered through. Members of the public are invited to participate in the meeting with the key points as follows. Public participation is limited to a maximum of 4 minutes per person and must be relating to an item of business on the agenda. As Chair, I will interject if needed to enforce this. When the public participation agenda item is introduced, please raise your hand to show you wish to speak, and I will invite you to speak. If you are comfortable standing, please do so to ensure you can be heard across the room. You do not need to state your name when you start speaking if you do not wish to, but we ask that you clearly state which agenda item you are speaking about. I would ask that participants looking to leave the meeting wait until the end of an agenda item to limit distractions for other participants. Members of the public looking to leave the building will need to be escorted out by a council officer. If the meeting goes into confidential session, a short 2-minute break will be held to allow members of the public to leave. To all present, please remember to show respect to others in the meeting and avoid interrupting where possible to enable others to follow the meeting. If any councillor feels concerned about any aspect of the meeting or discussion, please clearly state point of order. I would then gesture for you to elaborate. If anyone present is felt to be behaving unacceptably, they can be ejected from the meeting by resolution. Thank you for listening. On behalf of the Council, I would like to thank everyone for attending this Council meeting. Onto the agenda. So, number 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Walraven, who is being substituted by Councillor Adeniji. That's for personal commitments. Apologies from Councillor Meek for work commitments, who is being substituted by Councillor Wearmouth, and Councillor Richard Honeyman, who is absent for personal commitments.
Thank you. Number 2, disclosure of interest. To deal with any disclosure by members of any disclosable pecuniary interest and interests other than pecuniary interests, as defined under the Seaford Town Council Code of Conduct and Localism Act 2011 in relation to matters on the agenda. No, thank you. Number 3, public participation. To deal with any questions or brief representations from members of the public physically in the meeting room in accordance with relevant legislation and Seaford Town Council policy. Oh.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to try and get some clarity about what is happening with the water fountains, please. Wrong glasses. Sorry about that. Right, I understand that rather a lot of money has been spent maintaining the town's water points in the last year. In this case, can I please know why the one in the Salts and the one by Place Lane were not working 2 weeks ago? I don't know if they are now, but they weren't working when I tested them all 2 weeks ago. I've seen several walking groups stop here off the train and be disappointed they couldn't fill their bottles up. Furthermore, a few years ago, I think it was probably 4, STC asked me as a newly elected district councillor to support a sill bid to make the installation of 3 new ones on the seafront. Of the 3, only 1 remains, and it does work because I tested it at Bonningstead on Saturday. This is incredibly disappointing, and given the footfall on the seafront, especially all these groups of walkers, it needs addressing. Do you have a plan, please, going forward as to how we can solve this? Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. The water fountain at Place Lane, they have had some works done at the toilet facilities with Lewes District Council, and it looks as though they have done something with the water stop clock in the facility, so we are trying to discuss with Lewis how we can get that switched back on, as it's in their facility.
Can I contact them and ask them that they hurry up, please? Is that all right?
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Thank you. The salts I will double check, as we did have that looked at a few weeks ago, as there was a leak, and I thought that had been repaired, so we can double check whether what's happened there. With regards to the unit that was on the Martello Cafe, we had some vandalism where that unit was displaced from the wall and the pipe was broken. It was rectified and we made some maintenance repairs to that, and then it happened again. So the unit has been removed at the moment, and a tap has been placed for people to be able to access fresh drinking water. And we still have the unit in storage that we can look at replacing on a different building.
And is the tap got a sign on it?
That's coming. So at the moment it doesn't have one.
So I think people don't know what it is for,
Yeah.
or who it's for.
Okay. Could I ask another question? You mentioned 3 units along the front,
Yes.
so we have Boninstead and the Martello Cafe.
There was one on the side of Frankie's as well.
So there was a problem where the unit was leaking inside the cafe,
Oh.
and we tried a few things to help to resolve that, but it wasn't working. So the licensee asked if we could remove the unit because it was disrupting the inside of the kiosk.
Okay. Is there somewhere else it can go?
Yeah, so we need to look at whether it's another building that we can attach that to, because they're ones that attach to buildings and they're not standalone. So that's something else we need to look at.
Can I ask if that's done as quickly as possible, please, and with signage?
We can have a
Because the
look.
number of visitors is just getting ridiculous in the week as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from public participation? Okay, thank you very much. Then on to agenda item number 4, which is the 2024 to 2025 year-end financial report for community services. To present the 2024 to 2025 year-end financial position of the former Community Services Committee based on the previous committee structure.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Obviously, in the absence of the RFO, I'm presenting this paper. This paper is being presented to both this committee and to the new Gulf Open Spaces and Climate Action Committee because it straddles the responsibilities of the former Community Services Committee. I think the paper seeks to explain itself and the budget for the community services at the end of the year 24-25. And I'd invite any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Wheeler?
I've got a comment about Martello toilets, which is 1.9 on page 6. Because I was partly involved in this with the facilities manager in the, no, not you, sorry, the predecessor, yes. In that the contract or the tender was accepted without a survey of the toilets of the building. So the roof and the drains had not been surveyed when the tender was agreed. And there was a previous knowledge, verbal knowledge, that the roof was unsafe and that the drains were not of adequate size for what was planned. I was told by the previous town clerk that this would be, process would go ahead and a survey would be agreed and organised. And in fact, the drains were satisfactory. It was quite a pleasant surprise. But it was not, the cost of the roof was not planned in the overall cost. And my understanding was, from what I remember, it was about £35,000. And this was not discussed with myself. It was agreed and not taken to any sort of council meeting or even mentioned to me until as head of community services until it had actually been done. And I just found that a curious way of making decisions. It could have been a really significant overspend if we had not been able to make savings in other parts of this building plan. And I would like to make sure that in future, if we have these big projects, that a full survey is done so that an exact knowledge of what is being taken on happens at the beginning, and there are no surprises halfway through the project, because this was a significant amount of money, and we were lucky to be able to cover it within the budget. That might not happen again. So I was just looking for reassurance that there'll be a learning curve in this.
Do you know anything about that, or was it before your time in the role?
I know some pieces around it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel able to talk about it because the officer who took responsibility for this is not here and is not an employee. So I feel it's not a reflection on you because you would. So I'm not criticising current officers, but I think as a process with public money, we should go into big projects knowing exactly what the problem is and what likely overspends are before they're encountered.
I mean, I think from my perspective, I can't speak to what happened prior to my time, but absolutely we would make sure that if we were going to do a capital project similar to that we would make sure all of the surveys that needed to be done were done beforehand. And if there was going to be a significant unexpected overspend, then I think we'd make sure that was brought back to councillors so that councillors were aware and approved or rejected that overspend.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else that you can add from your perspective, Sharon, or I think you were probably a bit disjointed from it.
Yeah, a little bit removed, but I think maybe we've got different officers now. Available to work on these projects in a different way.
I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
Thanks. Just ask a question, if I may, please. I noticed on 2.4, for example, that you transferred £50,000 to the EMR for that. And I just wondered, on 1.14, the projects that you've had underspent on or that were deferred to this year. Have those expenditures, those budget line items been transferred to EMR as well, or have they just disappeared to the general reserves?
I would need to check with the RFO and come back to you with a written response.
No, I don't need to. Just a question.
Yeah, I don't want to say yes for sure without knowing, but I can check.
No, I don't need that. I just wanted to know if it was just it's not.
Thank you. Any further questions on the accounts? See if I can make any comments. No further comments? Right, then we are asked to put the paper clips in again, don't I? Yeah, no, I know, but I mean, I need the paper clips in, so I knew going back, I need to get back into that habit. Right, so we are asked to note the contents of the report. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Denigian, a seconder, Councillor Rutland, and all in favour. Thank you. Agenda item number 5, which is Assets and Facilities Projects Log and Update Report, May 2025. To present the Assets and Facilities Projects Log and provide an update on progress and actions relating to the Town Council's assets and facilities.
So we've reported the updates from the Assets and Facilities team in a slightly different way on this new style look report, where it's all listed under headings for you, to let you know in each area whether there is an update or not at this present time for this part of the meeting. And then we have issued a new look and updated projects log for assets and facilities, as it needed to be split between the two meetings of the GOSCA with the golf and open spaces. So it looks a little different, and would welcome any comments from you on the boards.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Moffat?
Yes, could I raise 4.7 lifeguards hut? So I think it's really good that we've moved on with this issue, and this is move to having beach hut 60 with the facilities, power, water and waste drainage in readiness for the summer 2025 is really lovely, and because obviously it's been a great concern to us. What I did want to just clarify, because it doesn't appear to say this in here or in other reports, that this is actually a temporary arrangement and not a permanent arrangement. I just wanted that clarified in the minutes, please. I am aware from working or with communications with the lifeguards that there is a vision for a different sort of structure eventually, and there is funding around the town to support that. So there is quite a momentum behind it, but I also know that lifeguards have to just get their ducks in a row for that and for other grants to come to them. But just to relieve any anxieties that this isn't going to be here ad infinitum. In actual fact, we are very supportive for them getting funding in the future to have a more permanent base, dependent on their time frames, but also extremely grateful that you've managed to move forward in haste so that we have lifeguard coverage for 2025 summer. Thank you.
I saw Peter from the lifeguards at the Bishopstone
Picnic.
Fair.
Fair.
That's it, fate. That's the word I was thinking of. He was saying that they have a very big shortage of lifeguards. Do we know how they've got on with recruitment at all, or if they're...
Well, they're continuing to recruit, yeah.
Yes, but have they been successful? I mean, he did intimate that if they didn't get anyone, they might not actually be able to continue at all.
I think they're working on it.
Okay. Well, let's give them the facilities that we can.
Yeah.
If I can just say, I mean, those facilities are ready for them to use and occupy now. And whilst you're right, Councillor Markway, it doesn't say that on the report itself, on the log, the project log at AF9, it does mention it's a temporary provision. We don't know how long.
Temporary, yeah, I guess it's a time frame.
We don't know how long for, but it's a temporary provision. We know it's not the long-term home, but it will be until such times as they get a more permanent home.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Councillor Margaret? Sorry, Councillor Booman.
I've got a couple of questions. One is about the timescale of the compostable toilets.
Yep.
Do we know when they're going to be taken up to Seaford?
Do you want me to do this, or do you want
Okay.
to? Somewhat complicated. The person who provides and moves the compostable toilets has a very limited diary space for them to be moved.
Yeah.
We are still waiting for confirmation from the South Downs National Park Authority whether or not we need planning permission to put them there.
Oh, yes.
We can't put them there before we've got that confirmation, and so we are struggling with dates to try and to ensure that we get that confirmation from the National Park before we move them up there, and that when we do that, the guy who moves them can still move them.
Sure.
So Sharon is working hard to get a response from National Park, and also to find out what his availability is, and also whether or not another supplier could potentially move them, but they need to be somewhat dismantled to be moved and then rebuilt again once they're moved.
I knew it wasn't straightforward, but I didn't realise it was that complicated, because my understanding is that the toilet facility with the previous concession has been taken away. Are there any toilets up the Sandhill
Yes,
Barn?
do you want me to answer that? Sorry, because I was up there a couple of days ago. So I've spoken to the concession holders, sorry, through the chair.
I was going to say through the chair.
I do apologise, Chair, through the chair.
I thought I was going to keep order.
Absolutely, sorry about that. Yes, so I've spoken to her, and basically there is quite a lot of anxiety. They do have two toilets. One is only for the staff, and it's locked up, and it's just for the staff, and it's within the barn. the other one is in the corner. The biggest problem is that there are so many people going up to the barn that after about midday it's full, it's whatever, and then often in the evenings when they've closed, they know that by the time they get there the next day, if it wasn't full before they left, it's full by the next morning because people are up there in the evenings and they hop over the gate and they use it. They say they're not locking it because they would break the locks, so there's no point in doing that because they're still going to try and use it and get access to it. It's becoming quite an issue for their ability to market their concession, because some people are saying, well, we're not going to use it if we can't use the loo, and you know, so it's becoming a bit of an issue between themselves and their visitors. So they are quite concerned about it because one is just not enough, and the biggest problem is it just blocks up all the time. So I mean, they're literally having the guy coming to empty it properly on a daily basis, and then the other issue is are they paying for that on a daily basis? That wasn't their expectation. So it's becoming quite expensive for them. So there are quite a lot of ramifications apart from the fact that people need the loos up there, that it's actually having quite a negative impact on the concession. And it's become quite unpleasant at times. People have been quite unpleasant to that person, and at the moment they only have one person in Cadence in the concession, unless it's a really busy weekend when they do have two. So it's becoming quite a difficult situation for them.
Can I add to that? We were actually in contact with Roger Mile, who's the concession director for Cadence. He emailed us on the 14th of May to say that despite polite notices, the general public continue to ignore our request that the customer toilet provided by Cadence be just that, a customer toilet. Consequently, the toilet is being filled up at a rate that the service provider cannot cope with as far as emptying is concerned. And we're starting to run the risk of it overflowing, which obviously we can't afford for public health reasons. Consequently, I think we're leaning towards taking the public toilet away, so we cannot be blamed if any substances manage to find their way through. I appreciate this action then causes a greater risk of members of the public relieving themselves in the countryside, but we feel this might be the safest option. The alternative, of course, is that in the short time the council helps us by funding a second public toilet, which would double the capacity until the compostables were delivered. The other obvious solution is that we share the cost of emptying the toilet more than once a week, but that is not a service that the current operator can offer, given logistical capabilities. So we went back to ask about how they are preventing the general public from using the toilet, and we discovered that they're charging non-customers a fee to enter the toilet during the time that the concession is open. So we are in continuous discussions as a result of those emails in terms of what else could be done, and whether or not the need to charge non-customers is something which is helping that situation or making it worse. If that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Sharon?
No, I think you've covered it all, really. Yeah.
Excuse me, Chair, could I make one more comment? And this was kind of a hygiene comment. They don't have running water up there, they have what they have. There's one person and the toilet is often left in a state, and they're having to go in between customers and clean the toilet. Now in a normal restaurant,
That's
not good.
well, no, that's what I'm saying, it's not good. But because they've only got one person there and there's so much footfall for this toilet, that this person is having to leave the hut and then go and clean the toilet, and then saying, well, I only have a certain amount of boiling water on site, so I'm having to use some of that to make sure I'm hygiene friendly. So the whole thing is getting a little bit silly, really, and it's becoming a bit crazy. So there seems to be so many parts of this that are not going well in terms of toilets.
Did they propose a solution to that problem at all?
No, they didn't at the time. They were just concerned about it because they were wondering what else was happening. But you have to remember, I'm talking to the person that's in the hut. I'm not talking to the boss who's having to make decisions. But I did say, just write in and explain your concerns to your manager and, you know, etc. So I don't know, but that's on Monday
Sure.
this week.
Obviously, through the chair, I mean, we continue to liaise with Roger Mile to see what can be done to make the situation better.
Yeah.
And I think if the charging of the general public to use the toilet is causing the toilet to fill up too quickly, then perhaps that's an area. But I recognise the issue you say about locking it, and whether that would cause more damage because people would force it open. I don't know if that would happen if it was locked in the daytime when there was a member of staff there. But the issue is, of course, if someone comes up and they're not a customer and begs to use the toilet, it's a difficult conversation.
For somebody on their own.
Councillor Winner?
Yes, thank you. That's obviously work in progress, and I think, you know, it is a matter of urgency, isn't it? Because we don't want it shut.
Yeah.
Could we hire some Portaloos or something? I mean, the chemical ones, I know it's not ideal, but could we do something to bridge the gap while we get the compostables up there?
Is there an issue in terms of planning for temporary?
I suppose because
There's a space there.
Yeah. I mean, we don't like chemicals, that's why the compostables were there, but I think as a short-term measure, I think we need to have a look at this, knowing what the alternatives are and how it offends and upsets the residents of Coast Guard cottages when we know the alternatives of public behaviour when there isn't a convenience there.
Sure. I mean, it's not a budgeted item, is it? So, I mean, you know, councillors could potentially pass a resolution to the extent that you would like officers to look into or to source a Portaloo up there until such times as the compostables are able to be moved there.
Yes, I'd be happy.
Recognising that there would be an unbudgeted cost of
Yeah,
it.
I think that's sensible.
I think I'd be happy to propose
I'll second that.
that we officers are delegated to look at short-term temporary measures while the compostables are unable to be used up there for public health reasons.
We have to vote on whether or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know, but I've written it there so we don't forget to
No
vote
worries,
on it.
no worries.
I've just got one other, if you don't, on that list, if you don't mind, Chair, about AF12, the Gareth Wedding Memorial. So first of all, thank you very much, because I have had a lot to do with this, so I'm absolutely delighted to find it there and that it's green and being actioned. So thank you very much. And I know that members of the Friends and Family are aware that it is being fast-tracked for reasons of the infirmity of the mother, and certainly there was a very positive feeling that they were glad that this was getting the attention that it's long deserved and that we were doing something, and there was a real feeling of gratitude. Mrs. Wedding has been told, and you know, I think that's very good. My only concern, I laid the wreath for VE Day a couple of weeks ago, and I just feel that it might be part of a bigger review of the cage, those racks around the stone memorial itself. That maybe it might be part of a review of that. If a plaque is going to be placed somewhere on or near the memorial, it may be a good time to have a look and think, because they certainly look like they need at least a coat of galvanised paint, but it's whether, how do we use that, how long are the wreaths there after, you know, Remembrance Sunday, etc., covering up some of the names and things. So it may be part of a slightly wider review, and I'm very pleased that a new incoming officer has been given this task to move forward. So thank you very much. I very much appreciate the urgency that you've given to this. So thank you.
Can I raise a point of order? I'm not trying to be pedantic here, but can I just check what are the standing order stands with raising a motion that's not on the agenda? Because looking at the agenda we're talking about today, it's about to note the contents of an item. There wasn't any. There's no proposal on this motion about the toilet at the. So I just want to I'm trying to raise a point of order effectively. Is that can you vote on a motion that's not on the agenda? Because the agenda talks about noting the contents of the report. So just like I would defer to your opinion on that if you can clarify that understanding order. Just I'm trying to find a clear understanding on my phone, but technically I don't think you can. But I don't want to be pedantic, but I'm just trying to.
I mean, I think through you, Chair, the reason why we wouldn't do that is if there's a risk of the council or the committee making a decision where it hasn't had time, you know, the 3 clear days to consider that, to consider financial implications. This specific proposal, I guess it's with the committee maybe and us as officers to think about, you know, is there a risk with the decision that's being made by the committee here? Do we maybe need to reword that so that it's an instruction for officers to go away and look at options? It may be that, you know, the town clerk has delegated power to incur spend on an emergency kind of basis. We may feel that it falls within that remit. So rather than a specific decision to do it, it's an instruction.
I think I'm okay with that. So it's not a motion, it's an instruction to the officers.
It's been Councillor William said about the cost of, it says in 15.11, officers are preparing to move the cost of toilets from their current location, Seaford, to adjacent Seaford Barn, approved by the former Community Committee. This includes obtaining the necessary permissions required and aligning with the availability of the original provider of the units who will be carrying out the relocation. So that is in the agenda anyway. It's just the.
No, I think so. The governance managers addressed my question. It's not a motion. We're working on an instruction, which is all just to clarify. Because I don't want to say the president that we give motion. That's what I was just trying.
Yeah.
Not to be pedantic.
No, absolutely fine. That's fine. Any further questions? I have some questions.
You carry on because I'm trying to find it again. So
Okay,
sorry,
one question I have, and then I have some questions from a councillor who's not on this committee. Question I have is on page 45, which is the very last adjacent in about Esplanade car parking. I'm concerned that it's saying this isn't due to be looked at till completion forecast is 2026-27. To work further with East Sussex County Council and District Council review parking restrictions along the Esplanade. Now I know there was a lot of work done that last year and the year before. Are we hoping this is all wrapped up by 2026-27, or how is? Because obviously that's in a bridge part. So I had to actually get
Voting officer to
decide.
If I take that. We've been in contact with Dan Clark, who's the parking manager for East Sussex County Council, who has informed us that, I need to find the exact wording that he used. Excuse me 1 second. We review our parking areas every 16 to 18 months to make sure they meet the changing needs of our local communities. The next parking review for Seaford is March 2026.
Oh.
Hence why we put it in 26-27.
Okay.
Do you want to put that in brackets or something then under that
Yeah, we can add
item
it
so
to that to make it clearer.
it's clear for
to make
everyone.
it clearer. Yeah, please. Would ask you to make the letters bigger, but it also makes it pages bigger. Oh right, I was sent some questions by Councillor DeBar, who is not on this committee but has asked if we could answer some of her questions. So this is 5.2 on page 28 about the glass panes have been broken but a local glazing company is lined up to carry out the reglazing. How much was this cost? Should I do all the questions or do you want to? Or
Let's do one at a time, sure.
Okay, yeah.
I would need to double check with the officer that has worked through those tasks and come back to Councillor DeVas.
Yeah, the whole committee, that would be good.
The whole
I
committee.
mean, this is one of the bus shelters that we already own, and so we are liable for it. And when the pane is broken, we don't have any choice but to replace that. But, we'll get the value of the cost and get back to you.
Okay, 6.3, which is about CCTV. Quotes have been invited to address these challenges alongside any further requirements to improve and update current CCTV and monitoring systems for assets. Who were invited for the quotes?
We are still inviting people to quote.
Oh, still invited.
Yeah, so think
It's still open
I
for.
think Councillor Battles had somebody, a resident who wanted to quote. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay,
we're happy to talk to the resident about that.
okay, thank you. Page 30, 9.1, says about the promenade 3 bookings, what the dates of the runs, if that's possible, if that can come to here.
So they were held between March and May, but I can get the exact dates back to the committee.
Okay, thank you.
These are all dates in the past, obviously, because this is
Yeah.
March to
Yeah,
May. So.
yeah. Martella Cafe, I won't read it all out, but show exact extract of licence times, please, as tender shows this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unusual that we would put that in the agenda for a committee meeting to that level of detail. It is available to know.
I have been in communication with the concession, and they have given us a link that we can now put on our website to attach to their current social pages, and they are going through a process to develop those at the moment, and they're going to let us know when that's ready, so we can link that through the Seaford Town Council website as well.
Okay, thank you. Changing place facilities. This was regarding 15.7. This is to do with where the door was broken by the fire brigade, and just because there was somebody stuck in the toilets. And is this paid for by the provider of the faulty door? Who pays for the damage to be dealt with?
For Town Council.
STC.
We're the owner of the facility. The fire brigades aren't going to cover the cost of
No, every time they break a door.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we can't even prove for sure that there was a problem with the door. All we know is that the fire brigade were called, someone was struggling to exit the facility, and they used some sort of machinery to force the door open, which has caused massive damage to the frame and the door.
I've got a picture.
And it was the same day it had reopened from the previous vandalism.
You can't make that, can you?
I have got the pictures.
I mean, we can't be sure that it was, you know, we don't know. We've heard rumours of various different stories about what happened afterwards, before. We don't know, but the Change in Places organisation aren't going to take responsibility for a door that's been already fixed previously. So it's up to the Town Council. And the other issue is because it was intentional damage by the fire brigade. It's unlikely that it will be an insurance job because it's not accidental damage.
Yeah. Okay, Seaford in Bloom. Which external contractor? What is the planting scheme? Who decided it? What is it costing?
Seaford in Bloom is a scheme. It's an old scheme. So it's been around for a while. The contractor is Europlants. The agreement was made in 2024. I can share with the committee what's in the agreement and the costs within that agreement, because it's broken down into sections for each area. And that was rolled forward for 2025, but officers will be reviewing that contract for 2026.
Does that include the flowers by the wall memorial?
No, they're looked after by a different contractor with ID Verdi. Or are we talking about the planters? I think there's two
The area around
different.
the wall memorial. Because when we did VE Day, I noticed several members of the public commenting on the state and condition of flower beds, and they weren't best pleased.
Okay, so both of those contracts will be renewed for 2026. So I think we've got planters and borders,
Yes.
which are looked after by two different
It was
contractors.
I overheard a couple of residents talking about it as we were all standing there waiting for the VE Day. It's something that we need to keep on top of.
Okay, I've just got another question. This was about graffiti and vandalism, which is 20.6. East Sussex County Council attempted to remove graffiti at Bonington Act 3 times, but not to anyone's satisfaction. What can we do about it, please?
From my understanding, there was some graffiti and it was removed, and then there has been further graffiti. It is East Sussex wall, and so it is their responsibility to remove that graffiti, not Seaford Town Council's. So we have an officer who is chasing the contact at East Sussex to advise them that there is further graffiti, and it's not the same that we were talking about previously that they've already removed. Okay.
Through the chair, I think we would like to reiterate that anyone who wishes to report graffiti, report it via the STC officer though, because we've got a relationship with East Sussex, and we can get directly into the people at East Sussex that are responsible for doing that. So it would be best for it to come through officers here so that we can compile that list and take it to East Sussex and ask them to address it urgently.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mockroy?
Yes, sorry, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go back to 15.7, no I didn't, sorry, wrong page, to 9.1 and the C and the bookings around the runs and the marathons, etc., in the light of the water refill problems. I'm just wondering if we can just make sure we try and align some dates where we get water points working when we've got lots and lots and lots of people on a specific date that we absolutely know they're coming, and we will know they're coming on those dates. That won't change, and it will cause a problem, just like if toilets are closed, it'll cause a problem. So, you know, just to be a little bit proactive about that, because these are quite imminent dates, I'm presuming. So the water, you know, we need as a town to have water, fresh water running for our visitors, and we need to make sure those things connect up somehow.
Through the chair, in positive news, all of the new concessionaires that were taken on this year who have running water have an obligation to provide drinking water for free. So that's another 3 points that are available for people to get drinking water from.
And could I just add through the chair that those 3 runs and the route that they took place on, there are 2 water points that are working on there and available
just
to
wanted
them.
to check.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
And you had
different
your other
point.
question.
Yes, sorry, I was just making a connection there. This is on Orange AF22. It's the relating to the Youth Ambassador Board project from September 2025, the Seafront bin signage. So we've had quite a lot of problems with bins and distribution of rubbish along the promenade and concerns. I know that we do have good pickups, etc., but we've had quite a lot of Facebook and discussions about more bins, no, not more bins, people should be signed to take their rubbish home. Having said that, we don't have a Youth Ambassador Board in place at the moment, so this is not a project that's actually active at all. If we're waiting for that to become active as a board before we deal with signage, I think that we're on a hiding to nothing there, and I'm just hoping that we could extract the thing about having signs, because we need the signs now, not when the Youth Ambassador Board decides to come into play, if you see what I mean. So I think it's just, you know, picking that up and saying we need signs, whatever kind of signs you have, it would be helpful to have them sooner rather than later, though I know this is in orange and not green, and you have a long list of green, and thank you for making it all so clear.
I do have an update on that if you'd like me to provide.
Please.
So I have, that project is currently sitting with the civic team and not with the assets and facilities team, although it is relating to an asset. So I have asked if that in the interim could be passed back to us so that we could place the signs for summer 25, because we have been experiencing the rubbish issues, and then once the ambassadors are in place, perhaps they could pick up and renew the signs and do something with the youth of the town.
If I can just add to that as well, Councillor Mockwell, the idea of bringing the Youth Ambassador Board into that is more to develop a strategy. So this isn't about them just designing a sign like school children do saying, take your rubbish out. This is more about developing a holistic strategy in terms of the various different bits to the problem. So it's about, you know, evidence that's been collated, which is the more bins you have, the more rubbish you collect. It's about whether or not the bins need to be seagull proof, whether they need to be rat proof, that sort of thing, so that even if people do put stuff in the bins, it can't be pulled out by animals. It's also around the signage about taking rubbish home with you. There's a whole strategy around that. And the reason that the Youth Ambassador Board are mentioned is because they're going to be pulled together through the summer to start in the autumn term in September. And we're hopeful that one of the pieces of work they can do is to help to develop a strategy around this wider issue and see if they can come up with some suggestions that until now we've not been able to solve the problem. Because there is a debate about whether signage is going to make any difference to the people that leave their bags of rubbish by the side of the bin when it's already full up. I suspect that people that do that aren't going to take much notice of a sign.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I still think it's something that needs to be done quite urgently about it, which you seem to be picking up, so thank you very much for that update.
Absolutely. I think the point I'm making is just that the sign itself isn't the end of the thing.
No,
There's more to it than that. And that's where the YAB are hopefully going to come on board and help us to develop a strategy that attacks it from various different avenues.
Thank you. Any further questions? Right. So we've had the mention about looking at the short term of the Portaloos. So how are we going to word that?
I think Georgia proposed some wording which sounded good to me.
Yeah.
To be honest, through you, Chair, what I've done is captured it in the minutes as a comment, as a request rather than an actual motion. So I've just popped down, it was requested that officers look into options to ensure adequate toilet provision on site at South Hill Barn as an interim measure until the compostable toilets are on site.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Big.
Okay, thank you. All happy?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, absolutely. Spot on.
Right, so then we are asked to note the contents of the report. Can I propose there, Councillor Rutland, seconded Councillor Markwell, and then all in favour. Thank you. Right, agenda item number 6, to provide this is the Seaford Street Market consultation update, and to provide you an update on the investigatory work into the street market licence and progress to date with consultation to support the above.
Okay, thank you, Chair. As the report sets out, we have held a survey with a number of small traders in the town, which was inconclusive. In its, there was no consensus there. We've also been provided with a survey from the street market organiser, which is very detailed, but obviously it's not independent because it's been provided by the street market organiser. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but it's not an independent survey. So what we decided to do an independent consultation, which we're running currently for a month, which will enable us to bring back to the next Assets and Facilities Committee in July a recommendation based on the feedback. And this consultation will cover shop traders, market stallholders, market customers and local residents, and hopefully will be more representative of the whole town rather than the 15 responses we had in the first place. So I'd invite any questions.
Councillor Wimmer?
Okay. First of all, it's a point of order really, 3.2, where it says Town Council officers and the Chair of Community Services. It wasn't me in my current role. Was it you, Councillor Markwell? Yeah, I think it's
an error. It should say the Mayor.
Yeah, yes, it was the Mayor. It certainly wasn't me.
Yeah.
Apologies, that should say the former Mayor.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thanks. And I just have a comment really based on the Town Clerk's comments about the previous survey. I did see the results of that survey, and I think the main comment was that it was a very small survey. It was just 15 replies, so it was quite limited. And the message I took away from it was that the independent shops near where geographically close to Church Street were affected and had a view that there should be more control over the market traders. And as you got the shops and the chains that were further away from the street market and would change rather than possibly the independent retailers were less committal because they were not really in any sort of competition with what was being sold. Mm-hmm. So it was very much a question of it was predictable in its response that the people who were nearest and were most affected in terms of competition for for the what was being sold felt most strongly about it. So it didn't really add very much. So I think the thing is, we need to have a very clear idea of how we are going to deal, the length of time, and how we're actually going to deal with a new survey in order to prevent those, if you like, the same predictable response of how are we going to analyse and make sense of the results, and what are we going to do that's different because of it.
Through the chair, I mean, I think the survey that was undertaken was, as you say, a very small sample of 15 respondents, which is so small it's difficult to make much of a judgment. And the results were inconclusive in that roughly half were in support of the market and roughly half weren't. There wasn't really any conclusions to be drawn. So what we decided to do to make it more of a representative survey was to run an electronic survey, which is currently live on our website, on Facebook. It's advertised outside the front of the building on 2 posters, and there's various other communications that we're using to try and make sure that as many people as possible respond to it. It's got a number of questions in terms of how often do you use the market, are you in support. It's more detailed than the first one was, and the idea being that we're going to have a much larger sample, and we'll then be able to analyse those results and come to a recommendation that we can bring back to the next A&F committee meeting with the evidence that the survey produces and the data, so you can see for yourself. We just didn't feel we were able to make a judgment call one way or the other with the information we had.
Councillor Markgrove?
Yes, I mean, I'm just thank you, Chair. I just wanted to be grateful to the officers for actually taking their time to do this and to do a much more in-depth survey. It has caused a lot of consternation. I've been involved in meetings which have been really difficult, and but it's been very limited and not many people involved. But it's still residents who are or traders who are unhappy, and so to keep a happy town, it's good that they will be able to see that we've gone through a good process and a more equitable process. And I'm hoping that whatever the results are, the way that we're able to distribute the results actually kind of lays it to rest a little bit. I do think that not to predetermine anything, I do think that the contracting for the market trades have to be renewed. I think it's due for renewal anyway. And we kind of slipped it back because we were going to have this survey so that we could use the results before we impacted on any changes for that contract. But I do think we need to look at that very, very carefully because they have a knocked-out clause. Well, they have a non-compete clause at the moment. And I think we just need to be very careful about how that's rolled out in the future because it has caused such a lot of consternation. So thank you for the efforts that you're making.
Thank you. Any further questions? Right, we are asked to note the content of the report. Can I have a proposal, please? Councillor Wearmouth and a seconder, Councillor Markgrove, and then all in favour. Thank you. Agenda item number 7, to provide an update on the current status of Hurdy's House and the planned next steps.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The report lays out the situation with regard to Hurdy's House and the proposal for steps forward for Hurdy's House, and I'll invite any questions.
Any questions? Oh, Councillor Mark.
Hello, thank you very much, Chair. Just want to thank you for the report. I think we've all been waiting with bated breath. Very excited about the fact that once we've got the structural engineers in, we can go in and have a look round, for those of us that haven't been inside the building before. I'm also really pleased to see such potential for your options appraisal. I really was pleased to see the depth that you've gone into in determining how the options appraisal might come to us and what it will cover. And obviously there are, as far as I'm concerned, there are absolutely no answers at the moment as to where we would go with this until we have all the information, we're presented with all that information. And I think that is very, very important for us to just make note of, that there are no undercurrents and there are no expectations of one thing more than another. The options appraisal is the direction that we're looking for and the information that's going to come from that. Obviously look forward to having that at the right time. so that we can make a decision about such an asset. But it is really important that such a large asset on our books needs to be reviewed really carefully, and we take our time over it. Not too long, because obviously it costs us money, but that we do take our time, and we are going to be happy that we've done the right thing, whatever that thing might be. I also think it's important that the residents locally will have the opportunity to maybe feed in at some point any ideas that they might have. You know, if we need to do consultation, I prefer that to happen and delay it than actually not feel that we've engaged appropriate people. And it's also an asset that's right in the middle of the town centre, so it impacts on our traders as well. So I'm sure that, you know, it's possible that we look at that when we're thinking about the options appraisal.
I had a question about ongoing costs of the empty building. Presumably we've got insurance costs and security costs. Are we also paying business rates?
I can't give you an answer for definite. I'll have to get the I'll check with the RFO and come back to you.
Yeah, thanks.
The insurance costs, we pay insurance for a wide range of assets, and it's not,
Right.
they're not paid one at each.
Right, okay.
Do you see what I mean? So
Yeah, it's an umbrella.
but the business rate is a good question. I'll respond to the committee.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Antonini?
Yes. Again, can I just echo Councillor Markwell's comment? I say thank you to the officers for getting this far. I would just like to know an indication as to how soon we'll be able to present a report to our committee of full council. So basically, this is an asset, and the longer an asset is kept empty, the more cost is actually being underutilized. So I understand the need to do due diligence and consider. There's also was need to not necessarily delay for too long.
No.
I think.
No, we recognise that. I mean, it's only been quite recently that we've managed to actually get vacant possession of the building, because although the tenant left the building a while back, there were subtenants that were still in place until quite recently. So it's only been relatively recently we've got the building back, and we need to go through various steps. But we've put in the report 2.17 that we hope the intention is that the decision can be made on the options appraisal ahead of the budget setting process this year, which will start in November. So we're hopeful that the decision will be made before that time, because otherwise we're going to have to make budget allowances for the building going forward, which we don't want to spend money on having an empty building for any longer than we need.
Councillor Rutland?
2.3, talking about the pursuing the outstanding monies owed from the tenant. How is that going?
I'm not sure if do we need to go into that.
I think that's probably not for a public
Okay.
forum. If the committee wanted it, could go into confidential session at the end, and
Fair enough.
we could give a brief update, but not in the public sessions.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions?
I'd just like to congratulate officers at finalising this. It's been a long-running dispute. It's been very difficult, very technically demanding, and I think say well done to everybody involved. It's
Absolutely.
absolutely, you know, top quality work, and thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, well done.
Can we have that into a minuting that in minutes? Thank you.
So there's the universal consensus of all of the councillors.
Right, okay, if there's no further questions, we are asked to note the content of the report. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Rutland, and secondly, Councillor Antonini, and then all in favour. Thank you very much. That concludes the meeting at 7:58.